Denise, how are you?
Hello, good. Good to be with you today.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Sister Denise. It's good
I'm
to see
great.
you. Just a little background on our project here. It is titled the Performing Human Rights. And before COVID-19 hit all of us, we wanted to explore the impact of migration, the effects of migration on migrants, and tell their story in a performative way. And we hope to look at the border crisis here, the US-Mexico border, and then transport that project to Italy and look at the Italian Mediterranean migration crisis there as well. However, as you know, that project had to be reworked because Italy, the whole world is going through a crisis right now. And we've actually adapted to this crisis in that we have reworked our vision for analyzing disadvantaged, marginalized populations. So instead of focusing on just migrants at this point, we're looking at marginalized populations of people and the effects of human rights on people who are suffering from COVID-19. So we're still keeping the performative aspect of that, in that we're now interviewing more artists and understanding their coping, their emotional response to COVID-19, along with people like you who work with disadvantaged populations as well. So the project has expanded and adapted, but we still have the same intent in that we are uncovering stories and telling them within the frameworks of human rights and performance and art, really.
Caring for those that are among us already, too. Right.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So, where were you? Well, can you tell us a little bit of your work? What you are in San Antonio, of course. The work that you have been doing, let's say, up to the moment we had to be all in quarantine, and then we'll delve into what happened after that or during that, what is happening now.
Okay. So we've been reaching out. I mean, the picture behind me is the bus station, and obviously it's just a photo because that's not what it looks like at all. So right now, well, we had been serving families released from family detention centers just south here of San Antonio, meeting them at the bus station and the airport as they prepare for transport to their sponsors, usually their family or friends. And we've also been working with families who are having to remain in Mexico as part of the MPP program there.
Can you explain to us what that program is?
So the Remain in Mexico was it's called Migrant Protection Protocol, which more properly would be Migrant Persecution Protocol, because there's nothing to protect the families who are coming. So the families who come to our border and seek asylum during that period of time, because they're not taking new people into that program, but during that amount of time, those who came to the border asking for asylum, they were processed and then put back into Mexico and saying, you must have come back to our ports. Usually it's like every 3 months for like 4 or 5 times, depending on their case, in order to cross the bridge, go to court, then cross back over the bridge in Mexico, and then wait. And this is especially dangerous because the areas along the border in Mexico is where cartel activity, organized crime is very high. And they make money on, taking families and individuals, holding them for ransom. They know that they have connections in the United States, and if they hold them for ransom, then they would get that money. So the people have been traveling. They stay at the Mexico border during their appointment time, and then we've been working with a particular shelter, especially 2 sets in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. and trying to get supplies to them, and you know, take care of grocery bills, get blankets, get sweaters, get you know, sleeping pads, all those kinds of things. Underwear, you know, it's the very basic kind of things. You know, the excitement the families have when we would take underwear and pass out underwear. You know, it just really puts things in perspective when you have a group of kids who are extremely excited to get a piece of underwear. You know, you would never see that among here. But so so we've been trying to do that, but also to advocate for more fair process and treatment for the immigrants, because we really feel that there's just all our policies regarding immigration are being gutted out. So it's making it really impossible for people to seek asylum here in the United States. Whether they come, you know, through the regular process, or if they cross the bridge and ask for asylum, or cross the river and ask for asylum, it's the whole process is working against them now. So we've in the past year, we've really tried to work more on that advocacy to have good policies.
So, Sister Denise, that is the work that you and your organization were doing up to the moment in which we had to all go in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into the effect on this marginalized populations, the immigrants, what was the effect on you? What did you do? How did you deal with the fact
it's just very hard because I have an autoimmune disease, so I know that I'm, you know, very vulnerable to you know, COVID if I get it, and mostly all our volunteers during the weekdays at the airport and bus station are over 65. So it really was just, it's been a terrible personal tug of war, you know, how to still care for the immigrants and how to protect people from getting sick also, because it's not going to do us any good if, you know, our volunteers end up in the hospital or worse because they've been exposed. So that struggle was the hardest thing, and we did end up temporarily, well, it's still going on, but closing our outreach at the bus station and the airport, which it was really a heart-wrenching decision to make. We still have on-call people, so if a situation does arise, then, you know, a volunteer will go down and take care of the situation. But, you know, in conjunction with the personal changes of like, okay, what do I do? How much do I expose myself? There was all these other situations, you know, because of policies. So our border was closed to taking new immigrants. With the Remain in Mexico policy, it changed over. So the focus had already switched before COVID came. So before COVID-19 started, there was a policy, two different ones. One is to have people at the Border Patrol facilities right there on the border, be there for about 10 days, and then have their court hearing, their final and only court hearing about asylum. And then I don't know if anyone made it through, but because they had like a half-hour warning to get a phone call to a lawyer or a family. And with that, they were usually deported. So people were being deported right away. There was also I'm trying to think of the name of the other one. So between the new policies that were coming, you know, streaming people, deporting them quickly, we weren't having people coming up from the border like we've been having so much during the past year. So there's been that effort to cut off all immigration at the border even before COVID-19 started. So I guess it was the beginning of March, and when all of this started, and at that time I was going once a week into Nuevo Laredo with Pastor Lorenzo Ortiz of El Buen Samaritano, and to visit the people there, to get the stories of the families who are coming up for court, seeing what supplies they need, trying to think of educational things to keep the kids kind of stimulated. And with the outbreak of COVID, and particularly there were cases here in San Antonio, deciding not to go down anymore, more out of fear of bringing them the virus than receiving it. Because up to this point, even at the pastor's shelters, there are no cases of COVID-19. The other shelter that we try to help support some in Nuevo Laredo, La Casa Migrante Nazareth, they have cases of COVID, but those are because we deported people from the United States who had the virus. And so when they arrived, they were found to have it. So they actually had to close that shelter down, except for the people who have COVID-19 who are there trying to get better.
So, and now?
And now, well, actually for a couple weeks, Mexico really shut down their border, and the pastor, he actually lives in Laredo and goes to Nuevo Laredo every day to care for the shelter, and he has people there who are working also. He was still able to get across because of chaplain status, even though Mexico had kind of shut off their crossing also. But then they shut it off completely, so even he wasn't able to get across. So so I guess that went on for maybe 2 weeks. So we're still not going down at this point. We are discerning whether it's safe for us to go, but there's still no cases among the immigrants he's working with. So we really are, because they're so closed in, it could be 50, 80 people in one house. So if it gets into the house, despite what they're trying to do, they mop the floor with like a Pine Sol and bleach 3 times a day. When you're living in such close quarters and all these people using, I think they have 2 showers, it's really hard to keep, as clean as you need to in that circumstance. So we're continuing to bring supplies down. We have 2 storage units in Laredo that we take stuff down that the pastor needs and that they can't get easily in Nuevo Laredo. We tried to buy stuff online there, but it might just be because of the circumstance at the border, but they won't let you do online shopping and pick up. But the stores, I guess, have the same issues with cartel activity as everything else. When we go to the grocery store down there to buy, when I would go on Wednesdays, we'd go to the grocery store, and Interfaith Welcome Coalition would pay for the groceries, which we've continued to reimburse them for all those shopping trips, even though we can't be there. But you can, the Jeeps are out with, the military and their, stand-up guns and all that hanging out in the grocery store to keep people safe. So that's what, people are having to deal with, that kind of dangerous situation. And I don't remember what day it started. It was, I guess about the same time when, I guess it was March, where our government closed down the courts at the ports. So the ones that people would cross the bridge, go to court, cross back into Mexico, those were closed because of COVID-19. But the terrible part of that is that they didn't just say, okay, we'll reschedule you when it's over, we'll email you, we'll WhatsApp you, you can, get online and reschedule it. No, what the policy is now is these families still have to cross the bridge and get their piece of paper to reschedule and then go back. So they're being exposed to the virus. They're being exposed to the cartels. Many of them are living, further south in Mexico because it's not safe to stay on the border there. And so the pastor's still transporting people down to Monterrey and back and forth. So, and with the limited funds people have, they still have to pay for themselves to get back up to the border, just to cross to get this rescheduling paper and then leave again. And so it is very concerning about people's safety because, the policy of the cartel had been that they would only pick up the new people who had been sent back from our border patrol and to see if they wanted help crossing illegally and, try and make money that way. But now, that's impossible because you go to the border and you go to border patrol and in an hour and a half, they send you back to the other side. So the process is very quick. I don't know if how that technically will count against their cases later. Because generally if you have a deportation, even if it's a self-deportation, you decide to go back, it counts against your record. So I don't know how this will be affected long-term. Even if it was an hour and a half, is it still going to be recorded as a deportation? I think the official word is no, but those policies change so much to really seal off our border. And it seems that this was in the process before COVID-19 began, and that the pandemic has really been used to just cut off all chances of getting asylum.
So you said that some of you are on call for any type of situation that may arise. Mm-hmm. Is there any situation that arose that you would like to share with us? So what kind of situations may arise?
Well, yeah, things have been very quiet because in the process of sealing off the border, there's not new people coming to the family detention centers. And in March and April, especially in April, there were many releases from the family detention centers. We have not seen that in the adult facilities, but in the family detention centers, there have been a lot of releases. And from what I understand, they're not getting new people, except for maybe those internally picked up in an ICE raid or something like that. So the census is very low in the family detention centers. Therefore, like in the past week, we've barely had any releases. I think from the 2 detention centers, maybe 8 people have been released in the past week. And so we've only had one situation so far during this time. And it was actually someone who was coming up from the border. It wasn't from a family detention center. And I don't know the circumstance of why the miracle of how they got through. But they had missed their connection for the night or their bus. So we were able to find them a place to stay, a motel for the night, and got them food and all those kinds of things. And then the next day they were able to get back on to the rescheduled bus and get on their way. So, the whole immigration process has really, come to a standstill as far as like new arrivals. The people who are still in the adult facilities are still going to court by camera, by video call like we're doing. Those who are like doing ICE check-ins and stuff like that, those have been delayed. I think they're not rescheduled to begin again until June.
So can you give us a sense of what a family detention center is? And there are also detention centers for young adults, kids, right?
Mm-hmm. So the family detention centers are a place when a family comes to seek asylum. Generally, that's what it's for. It could be someone picked up, in a raid, in the country for being here illegally. But generally, it's those who come to our border. It doesn't matter if they cross the bridge with permission or across the river. That part doesn't matter. They're held in one of these facilities, and they have to pass a credible fear interview. If they, which is done by an ICE officer, not by a judge. So if they can appeal it to the judge, if they get a positive, then they can, go to their family or their friends in the United States and wait for their day in court that decides if they stay or not. And there's the Flores Agreement, which is an important piece. So in the family detention centers, you're not allowed to keep children. Technically, it's more than 5 days, with the extension of at the max 20 days. So that's a special protection for children who are in the family detention centers. This doesn't apply to the unaccompanied minor facilities. So the unaccompanied minor facilities are for those under 18. Many teenagers do come by themselves. They're being forced to join gangs that they don't want to join and become violent and all that, or especially for the teenage girls, they're expected to be, the sexual partner of a gang leader or gang member, or, of the whole gang. So they flee, often without their families. But sometimes these children come with their grandmother or their aunt or their uncle or, a close friend of the family, and either they don't have the right paperwork, or the paperwork's been stolen along the way, or something's happened. And so there's no official connection. So these children are separated. Sometimes it's done randomly. I know there's been cases where people have had the correct paperwork and they've still been separated. So, that seems to go against all the policies, but it does happen. So these children will go to these facilities. I know they would be facilities in the United States that would also hold often children who are like taken from their homes because of abuse or stuff like that. So the nonprofits, because the for-profit places are very different. I want to really distinguish that. But the nonprofits are places like children's homes, that would have been orphanages back in the day, but now do foster care. So the unaccompanied minors go there. Usually the little kids will be, sent to a family to stay with locally until communication can be set up with their family members. So the institution will contact family in the United States, and they have to go through all the things if you were going to take in a child for fostering them, the background check and, all those different things to make sure that they're not sending a kid into a bad situation. So that would be the unaccompanied minors. And then the adult detention centers, I think, get the least amount of attention, unfortunately. And these are often, if a family comes to the border and the family goes to family detention center and you're the 18-year-old, you get separated and sent to the adult detention center. And you're not held for 20 days. You could be held for a year or more. Grandmas who come with their grandkids, and for some reason they get separated. The kids go to the child facility and the grandma goes to the adult detention center. So the adult detention centers are often in remote locations, and getting lawyers is very difficult. Many of the people who come seeking asylum have sold everything they have back at home in order to pay to get through cartel areas. You got to pay your money to get through safely. Often they'll have a guide who helps them on certain parts, and they have to pay their coyote too. So there is no money for lawyers. And because the immigration process is not criminal, even though in the United States we talk very much that it's a criminal offense. It's not a criminal offense. It's immigration court. It's about being an immigrant and going through that. So there's a whole separate court system. And in this court system, you are not provided a lawyer. So if it was a criminal case, you know, you're provided, you're assigned a lawyer if you can't afford one. But that's not the case with the immigration cases. So you have children who go to court and, you know, they have no lawyer, and who's going to speak for the 3-year-old, you know? So, but I think the often forgotten people are the ones in the adult facilities who spend, you know, so much time there because they don't have any, you know, special protections. They don't know their rights. And the way the policies are working right now, even if they pass their credible fear interview, they're supposed to be able to post bond if they pass their credible fear interview, but they're often being held anyway, even if they pass their credible fear and are not released on bond. But without representation, there's really no one to stand up for their rights and to fight for that.
I have a question. I kind of wanted to shift the conversation a little bit, but Sister Denise, you're someone who has such a comprehensive understanding of the immigration process, and not just the legal or court processes, but actually actual like daily emotions that some of these migrants go through, including children and adults. So with that knowledge, I have 2 questions. How do you, like, what is your emotional response on a daily, weekly, monthly, or you've been doing this for years now, yearly basis? Do you go through cycles of certain emotions when you're dealing with these cases, and as you uncover more about these cases? And then my follow-up question to that is, how do you, like, what is it? What is the feeling, the emotional feeling, the spiritual, mental feeling you carry? I'm sorry to make you emotional.
Guess that answers your question, huh?
Well, just to finish that, what is the weight, probably, maybe it's the good word, that you carry as the holder of this information for your nonprofit group? You're often someone who's interviewed and the point of contact for these things. So what are those 2 emotional spectrums? What do they look like for you?
Yeah, because you know, I guess the business of things helps protect me from my own emotions, you know, because when you feel like you're doing something, you feel a little more empowered and like, okay, I can do this or I can do that, you know. Even in this time of COVID, they were like, okay, I'll make face masks, I can do something. But I think, you know, that's the hardest thing in this process, is that, you know, it's so easy to fall into that sense of hopelessness and helplessness. You know, these families have suffered so much. And I think, you know, if people understood, you know, I've been trying to collect the stories from families that are down at the in Nuevo Laredo waiting for the court date, you know, because if we meet an immigrant and we know their story, then it's not just a statistics, you know, it's not just this many thousand people have come to the border, but, you know, it's, you know, Irasi, you know, her kids, and, you know, Julia, and it's real people with real stories and real struggles. And, you know, they're not all just a blob of, you know, people who are coming to take our jobs. They're people who are trying to survive. And you know, just it can be overwhelming to know that the way our system is slanted against them, and that, you know, our court policies are set according to the president's discretion. You know, so if the president says, you know, I want people deported and these are the things that we're going to cut down on asylum, you know, gang violence doesn't count, domestic violence doesn't count, the immigration judges have to follow that. They're not independent like in criminal courts, which I was rather shocked to find out. But anyway, so knowing that these people have made it all this way and have given up everything they had, so they have even less than they had before, are probably going to be deported, you know, is really just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And the, you know, the only way to keep faith really is to be connected with other people who care. You know, I think that's, you know, working with the Interfaith Welcome Coalition, that being working hand in hand with other people of faith, and not even just of faith, but, you know, loving, caring, compassionate people, you know, helps me remember there are good, caring, compassionate people still in the world, you know, even though our policies right now are cruel. And, you know, I think even, you know, with the ICE officers I've met and the Border Patrol agents, there are some wonderful people working for them. And there are some terrible people too. You know, so I think, you know, trying not to build an atmosphere of hate like they're the enemy, but the policies are the enemies. And how can we garner that attention? You know, because we don't want a sense of helplessness either, because then we all just sit and cry and we don't do anything. But, you know, there is a way to change the situation. And I think for us, educating for others, you know, letting people understand these are real, caring people. I've met these people, I've heard their stories, and sharing their stories. But it's hard. It's really hard, because there's, you know, we find in larger cities, there's a lot of interaction with immigrants, but then there's areas of the country that are just so white and there's no interaction. And, you know, so we're afraid of what we don't know. I mean, that goes with, I mean, it's not just people, you know, I'm moving to a new place. The place is unfamiliar. I'm afraid to go there. Or, you know, you're going to another country. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never been there. I don't speak the language, you know. But I think it's that same attitude, and it crosses so easily here in the United States, and I imagine everywhere, into racism, you know, where it's about the color of someone's skin rather than the content of their character. And how do we change that is a much bigger question, isn't it? Did I answer both your questions?
The last question was actually more how you hold all this information. You have a comprehensive understanding of immigration and the stories of people. So how does your knowledge and experience situate within the community that you're in, which is in a community that is both in Texas, in America, you're in a community of people who want to help people at the border, but also within like the border in Mexico, where there are also communities of people who are reliant on you and your friends to get information, get help. What is it like being this holder of this knowledge of what needs to be done?
Yeah, it's a great responsibility. And actually I'm moving in June. So, you know, the trying to share the responsibilities, to get people who are trained to do the same thing, not to be selfish withholding the information I have, because it can easily become an ego trip, and say, oh, you know, I'm the expert in this, or I know about this. But, you know, it's not about that. It's about what's best for everybody, and sharing that information and making those connections. You know, we have a Jewish community in Massachusetts who provides the backpacks for us. You know, they came to visit. You know, we have people who are writing Mother's Day cards, who wrote Mother's Day cards for the family detention centers. So, you know, to not, that I don't become the center of things, but I help connect other people to one another, you know, so so it becomes a broader thing that has that sustainability and the stability, because it's a solid network, not just, you know, wrapped around one person. But that but we got to make sure people are trained to do things that they're doing, and that they understand the heart of it too. You know, because you know, I think with Interfaith Welcome Coalition, you know, we have a certain attitude about our service. You know, it's that welcoming and that compassion and that caring, and it's not about being haters to the other side, you know, whoever the other side might be. You know, it's about compassion all the way around, and about dignity and respect for every single person, whether, you know, they work in the White House or at the border or ICE, you know, but especially to promote the dignity and respect for the people who are getting none, which are, you know, the families seeking asylum.
So you talked about, you have listened to some stories from the families. So just to finish our conversation, would you like to talk about, put a face and on these stories? Because, you know, you just said a story is not a statistic.
Right.
Thing to say.
Yeah. I wish my Spanish was better, but I think in some ways it protects me from, you know, the gruesome details that they share. But I think, you know, we really have no idea often of the violence that they endure. But there was one particular woman I'm still in touch with, and was from Honduras, and her partner, her husband, was physically abusive to her, very violent. And she had, in the area around she lived, she knew of 6 women killed by their partners. And she was afraid of becoming number 7. And there's no protections for women in those cases. You know, there's no sense in reporting it to the police, because, you know, nothing is done. Those 6 other cases were never investigated or anything, you know. And then she was coming up, she was in Mexico for a while. She was raped while she was there. She came here to the United States, find out she was pregnant. And so she had a little one already, and she's pregnant with this baby of this drug addicted person that she doesn't know. And not knowing, you know, and that's when this was a couple of years ago now, so that's when the immigration policies were more friendly, you know. So she's still going through the court system, but like, what was it? You know, just the paperwork issue even, you know, she was working at a hotel doing some, you know, hospitality work there, and you know, someone lost her paperwork, whatever. She lost her work permit. She's out of work, you know, has her little kid, you know, has the baby, you know, so it affects all those things. You know, these are families, and especially women with children, who are just trying to provide for their kids. You know, I read, I don't know if you've read the book, American Dirt. And it turned out to be very controversial here in the United States, because it was a white author sharing about that. And it made me think, you know, how is it me telling the stories of these people versus them telling their own stories? And of course, we'd rather have them tell their own stories, but where do they get the platform and the support and all that to do it? And, you know, and in the support of the book, I'm not getting any money from this, but but I found, the experience that she shared in that book to be very consistent with what the families go through. Another particular story, there was a woman at the bus station, and she needed a shirt because hers fit her real tight, and she explained what happened to her. She said they were walking, and they had been at a shelter, and they were moving on to the next place, and she was gang raped. And she was not even a young woman. She must have been 40 or something like that. And so she came out of the woods and the bushes and all that, and she didn't even have pants on. Her shirt was torn, and the other women came forward to give her something to wear. And she was talking about in a like laughing, funny manner, and I thought, oh my gosh, and to know that happens over and over. She said, where it happened, there's just all these pairs of underwear hanging from the tree there. So just the terrible things. And I hear story after story of when the cartels hold people for ransom, and the girls that are raped during that time. And I was at the shelter, I guess it was back in maybe the end of February, and the kids are so bored, so I brought them these little slap bracelets. It's like a band, and you slap it, it goes around your wrist, and it helps pass the time. Well, this little one, she must have been like, they were playing, and then quickly they became swords, or these other things. But this little kid, she must have been 4 years old. She took that snap bracelet and was pretending like she was cutting my neck. And I thought, what has this child seen? What has this child seen? Because it's not unusual when they're held for ransom that the cartel members try and get them to scream and cry and on the phone with their family to make it more urgent. And they're often cut and girls raped and things like that, just to put the pressure on the families here to pay up. But there's so many stories like that. And then young women who are taken but not held for ransom, but put into sex trafficking. So I know there's a lot of groups, here in the United States who are trying to, combat that. But I think the first thing is men stop buying sex, get to the basics of it, like stop buying drugs, and, the cartels won't be getting money for getting drugs, but they seem to just move to other things, such as, selling people instead. But those kind of stories are just so common. There's a couple of stories I tell often, but one was, because they just seem to be so typical of everyone's experience. But there was one, I think her son was 11 years old, that was with her at the bus station. And, we don't ask them the stories because, the Greyhound bus station is not the place to ask someone about their trauma, so we don't do that. But sometimes we're hanging out, and they will speak up and share. And she said that her son used to go play in the park with his friends all the time. They played soccer and all that. But the cartel people kept harassing them to join the gang. And so they started finding his friends dead in the creek there. So, she said, we're leaving, and often, that decision is pretty fast. That they pick up and they go, and the repercussions for their particular family, but for their country is big. Because I was listening, I was part of a Zoom conference. Really, part of it was talking about the economic issues in Central America and the United States influence in those areas, and how we pressure those countries to have certain policies, and the multinational corporations have such a land grab there, and control a lot of the labor and the land. But the thing that applies here is that these people who are fleeing their country are trying to quickly sell their land, and it just empowers these corporations who are buying up their land. So people are just so dependent on others for work and for their livelihood. So they get here and they don't have anything. So, but it's just very distressing for the families down there. And I know that, you know, with people out of work here right now, their families are not able to send money back to their families in Central America and other places. So the impact there is great too.
So it's troubling to think that, as you said, these are common stories, because so many people don't hear those stories.
Right.
For you, they are common. So just to finish up, what can we do?
Yeah, and I think we wrestle with that a lot. And I think there's two big pieces of our outreach and our caring and compassion. And I think, you know, as a daughter of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul and member of the Vincentian family, we talk about charity and justice, you know, the two hands. So the charity is that humanitarian care we provide, you know, food, a blanket, you know, a bottle of water, a meal, you know. But then the justice piece, you know, what are we doing to change the policies? What are we doing to promote justice in the courts and things like that? Do we vote to put people into office who will support and respect the dignity of immigrants and restore asylum? I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the hate and everything else that's out there and say, like, you know, what power do I have? What does it make a difference? You know, what I do, but I do see the difference. And I think, you know, when we connect with others, we feel not so alone in that process. I think it's really hard when we're doing things on our own. You know, even if it's just voting, I mean, you're not voting with someone, but, you know, you're being supported by others who saying, you know, okay, we're going to recruit people to get out there and vote, you know, and it's just like, that is a way we can make a difference. But working, you know, writing letters, calling your legislators saying, you know, this is not right, this needs to change. And I learned in a meeting we had with one of our representatives here in San Antonio that they don't always know what's going on with how the immigrants are being treated. You know, they're dealing with so many things that it's our responsibility to speak up to our representatives and say, hey, you know, and this is a very immigrant friendly representative, and he didn't know, you know, the changes that had happened at the border. So, you know, opening that communication and not feeling that, you know, they're supposed to represent us. So we have that right, don't we? You know, so we need to make ourselves known, and that can be intimidating. But if your church or your organization or whatever can do that together, or you join an organization that does that, and like, okay, this is what we're going to say, you know, this is what we're going to do. We'll go together, and you speak, and the rest of us will sit there and support you, or, you know, but I think when we keep ourselves isolated in it, we feel powerless. And so it's important for us to keep connected. And one of the groups that I've been in touch with, which is just really, I think, a fantastic group, is the Interfaith Immigrant Coalition and IIC. And it's a lot of different organizations who, you know, have invested people in working on policy and, you know, going to Capitol Hill, you know, to Washington, D.C., but providing opportunities for prayer and resources for prayer. And those are things that we can easily take back to our local places. and use or sign on, and like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, we might not know how to write up an official letter to our representatives or something, but we're like, oh, okay, someone's done it, and this is what we can support. So I think those efforts are important, and to, you know, just like during this quarantine, you know, we can feel very isolated in our own homes, and we could just, you know, sit home and feel lonely, or, you know, we can call someone up or video someone, or, you know, we can do something about it, but it takes more effort, doesn't it?
So I do have a last question. I don't know if Rachel does, and also another one. Does it work?
Does it work?
Yeah.
Well, with some people more than others. But the thing is if you don't make the effort, you don't know if they're making that choice. You know, like, you know, we have 2 senators here in Texas. One is very anti-immigrant, and the other one, I wouldn't say he's for immigrants. I haven't seen any legislation that he supports for immigrants, and he often supports anti-immigrant things. So, you know, I don't feel that they listen, right? You know, we have tried, so we can say, okay, we've tried, we've brought things to their attention, and they have not responded, you know, in a supportive way of immigrants. And so it's like, okay, well, who are other options for the election in November? So, you know, but if you haven't communicated any with them, or if people haven't made an effort to educate them, like, how can we hold them accountable if we haven't done anything? You're like, okay, we've tried, they haven't listened, they're not doing anything, they're actually moving, you know, further anti-immigrant. Okay, you know, that's it. You know, we need to find someone who respects, you know, and has compassion and dignity for everyone, you know. So I'll let you know in November how effective it is, right?
I think we will know that, right? Rachel, do you have any final thoughts or questions for Sister Denise?
I don't have any more questions, but I'm so grateful that you shared all this with us. It gives us a lot of insight for our project, I think.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, really, because, you know, so often people just don't know what's going on, you know, and anything we can do to help people understand, you know, this is what's going on. You know, they're not just the family seeking asylum, just looking for, you know, better pay. You know, they're looking for livelihood and survival. And they're real people just like, you know, we were. And, you know, my family came over, and, you know, we made it through Ellis Island with no problem. You just had to show up on the boat, you know, and hopefully you weren't sick. If you were sick, you'd be quarantined. But, you know, it was much easier in the day. And so what's considered legal and illegal, you know, is all about the policies we set, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So we got to set good policies.
Well, I am an immigrant too, so I went through via Kennedy Airport, and that was pretty easy, you know, and other times.
Yeah. Yeah, they were much more immigrant friendly in my day. But I mean, my family experienced discrimination in New York. I mean, that's where my family came, and my family's name was LaRock, and, you know, we became LaRock just to anglicize it and not stick out so much. And, you know, my grandfather and all his family had an American name they used instead. So we just don't seem to learn that lesson, do we? It's easier to blame other people for our problems,
right,
than to say, okay, you know, what can we do to change things?
Yeah, there are images of the Italian immigrants in the 1880s in cages and being called chimps and all that. So this is a history that is unfortunately repeating itself.
Yeah, we just haven't learned that lesson, have we?
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the work.
Thank you for the work that you both do. Yeah,
we're going to miss you.